Hello, and welcome to the weekly broadcast of Strategic Speaking for Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and today I'd like to ask you, are you speaking as much as you would like to? Are you speaking in the right places? The thing about a speaking gig is that it can be incredibly useful and wonderful for promoting your career, promoting your ideas, promoting yourself as a strategic thinker or a thought leader, or it can be a huge waste of time. If you're not speaking in the right places, you're just wasting your time and you're wasting the time of your listeners. I want to give you a couple of updates to a podcast I did a couple of years ago when we were deep into the pandemic lockdown and we were adjusting to the fact that most of the time we were going to be online. That's a podcast episode called Getting the Right Online Speaking Gigs. Today, I want to talk a little bit about, now that things are happening live or hybrid, what has changed? And the answer is not a whole lot has changed. The right speaking gigs are the ones that will promote you, that will help you speak to the people who need to hear you. My thought is, though, that it sounds easy. It sounds like, okay, I'll just reach out to the right people. But I get questions over and over from my clients about, how do I start? How do I go about it? So first of all, I would say, go back and listen to Getting the Right Online Speaking Gigs, or read the blog because the basics are there. Secondly, think about, who do you want to have hear you? Who are the movers and shakers in your world who can, if they hear you, can advance your career, can move you forward, who can recommend you? Sometimes the best reason to do a speaking gig is so that the organizers hear you, because that might lead to further bookings. Thirdly, make the list of the people you're going to ask. And that's my main point today. Sit down and make a list of the 5 conferences you would like to be a speaker at, the conferences where the people you want to have know about you are going to be in attendance. What are the 5 top conferences that you have gone to? The ones where you've thought, wow, I should be up on that stage, or I should have been the person giving on the webinar. It's the same whether you are live or hybrid. Once you have your list of the top 5 conferences, check to see who they have already used as speakers. Most of the time, conference planners will not use the same person twice in a row. So there's always an opening next time around. See if you know any of them. Don't forget to check the people who are doing the breakout rooms. Who do you know who has spoken at this conference in the last, say, 2 or 3 years? Then reach out to them and say, hey, I saw that you spoke at the California Conference for Women. Who did you speak to? How did they find you? Would you be willing to introduce me? That's the key. Now, people are busy. It's very useful to have what I call a done for you email, which is when they say yes, they said, yes, absolutely, you'd be a great person to speak at that conference. I'd be happy to introduce you. But then they never get around to writing the email. I know it. This is what happens to me. It's okay to write what you want them to say and send it to them. I often like to use the phrase of, I know you're busy, so I have taken the liberty of writing something for you. Feel free to change it so it's in your voice, or use it as is. That's so much easier. As somebody who gets asked to write recommendations all the time, I can tell you it's so much easier to edit something that someone else has written rather than trying to think of what I'm going to say. The second thing, of course, is as you're looking at these conferences, make sure that they're interested in your topics. You will, of course, already have a speech. So this is assuming that you already know what you want to talk about. You have a speech that's ready to go. If you don't, contact me, because that's what I do. Make sure that your topics will fit and that your topics are a little different. It's really important to have a great title. The second part of this is after you've got your list of the first 5, make a list of the people you follow who are in your category, but not saying exactly the same thing. Who are the people who speak to the same people, the same sorts of audience? And reach out to them. You can look them up on LinkedIn. Do you have a connection with them? Or if you have, then ask them to recommend you to places that they have spoken. One of the things you can also do is go through their LinkedIn profile. That's where most of these people get posted. Go through and see what podcasts have they been on. What are the podcasts they've been on? Where have they spoken? Would any of it be good for you? And then reach out and ask. Once again, send them the done for you email. Conferences get you great visibility. They don't come around very often. Most people will speak at 1 or 2 each year. Podcasts are everywhere, and finding the right podcast that where you would be a fit is a great long-term strategy. This is where you never know when people will listen, but you can leverage your appearance on a podcast by posting it on LinkedIn. I was so happy to be on Elizabeth Bachman's podcast, Speakers Who Get Results. You get publicity, they get publicity, and do it more than once. Do it several times because it's good publicity for everybody. If you can speak to a group that is full of your ideal clients, that's the fastest way to get great results. If you have been brought in by the leader of a group, it might be a networking group, it might be an industry group, and you are already recommended by them, approved by them, then you can get instant gratification because you can ask people, you could reach out to people right away. Sometimes the owner of the group will share the mailing list with you, sometimes not. Always, always, always follow up 2 or 3 times, especially if you've had a good time. Then you say, thank you so much. It was a true honor to be on your show. Who else do you know in this same area who might be might have a group I could speak to or have a podcast I could speak on? I recommend people all the time. So if you've been on a podcast, also you will thank them and then ask them if there are other podcasters they know who need a guest like you. It's all relationships. Just as with the conferences, you want to find the name of the person who is booking the speakers and have a personal recommendation. The same is if you're speaking to a group, whether it's live or online. This works for everything. For live, online, hybrid, this system works for all of them. Now, there are a couple of caveats here. First of all, make sure before you do this that you have a speaker one sheet that you can send that includes a good bio. I like to send a separate bio that has a 2-sentence description. It has a medium description that's about 150 words. That's usually the one that people will post on the digital invitation. And then the longer bio, which is the one that they might read, and that has interesting things like Elizabeth is fluent in 5 languages. I'm recording today from Austria. People around me, it's no big deal here if you're fluent in 5 languages, but in America it is. So it's one of the things that people comment on all the time. They may not publicize the bio, but I guarantee you the organizer will read it, and that gets you more positioning. Make sure you have a good headshot, and you still look like that. So make sure you have a headshot that still looks like you. Try not to have a headshot with your face on your chin, because I'm going to try to scoot in to do this. If you nowadays, it's going to be cropped to just face and neck quite often, and then you get a headshot that looks like this. So try to avoid having your chin on your fist. And I know I've had my first headshot still looks like me, and it has my chin on the fist. But nowadays in this digital age, it's something to avoid. You want to make sure that you have a little flyer on your speaker as part of your speaker one sheet that gives key questions you can ask. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and that it says you are a speaker. And if you have a website, if you have a personal website, set up a speaking page. This is what Elizabeth speaks on. It's all of this is giving people as many opportunities as possible to find you. Be findable. Here's the second caveat. It takes time. It does take time. One of the problems with looking for speaking gigs is that it's one of those things that's really important but not urgent. It's very easy to put it aside and go and take care of the crises in your inbox. And then 6 months have passed and you realize you haven't done any speeches. There are a couple of great solutions to that. Hire somebody who is your booking agent and set up a conversation with them every 2 weeks, which will force you to think about it. They can do the research, but you have to make the final decision. As long as you have somebody who you're going to have to talk to every 2 weeks, then that will force you to do it. Or you can hire somebody. There's a speaker agent, somebody who's going to work on your behalf. I've done a great work with Whitney McDuff, for instance, or Lee Caraher. Both have been guests on my podcast, and I can post information about them. Sometimes people say, oh, but it costs money to have a publicist. But if you think about the amount of time it takes to do it yourself, and think about what you might be charging per hour, it is absolutely worth it to have somebody who can do it and do it fast and leave you free to do the important things in your business. That is where it makes sense. Frankly, it took me a long time to accept that, but indeed, it makes a big difference to do that. Speakers bureaus are okay if you are already a star. Most of the time, just being listed on something like Speaker Hub doesn't really get you anything. What you want is someone who is specifically advocating for you, someone who will work out a strategy with you, and someone who will make the phone calls and who already has the contacts. There's a great deal more about this in the podcast episode, Getting the Right Online Speaking Gigs, or you can just reach out to me here, wherever you're seeing this video, and ask me for ideas. I would be happy to help. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.